Are you a humanitarian or development professional looking to take your skills to the next level? Then our self-paced online courses are perfect for you. We cover all the key areas you need to know, including monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant and young child nutrition. Our courses are designed to help you advance your career, stay ahead of the competition, and make a real impact in your field. And the best part is that you can study at your own pace and on your own time. So don't wait. Enroll now and start advancing your skills today.
Webinar on why is theory of change the most important tool for program management and meal. As we start and as we continue to join this webinar, I would like to be able to give a brief description of who we are and what we do. So we are Humanitarian Global, situated in Kenya, currently located in Kenya. However, we operate globally. And we provide services to those in humanitarian and development fields through training and learning, as well as consultancy services to other humanitarian agencies and organizations. Our main goal is to promote a platform that supports learning and interaction to all humanitarian professionals across the world and empower them through quality training to create a global network of humanitarians. So through this, we've been able to have an online platform, a learning online platform that caters to those in the development and humanitarian field. And we do offer several different courses from WASH, that is water and water, sanitation and hygiene, all the way to procurement. Also, we do offer courses in monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And that has led us to now have this free webinar for all participants on why is theory of change the most important tool in program management and meal. And from this webinar, we'll be able to see different concepts in meal and theory of change and how they align to each other. And then from this webinar, we also have an upcoming training on theory of change, which is from the 13th to 17th of March. I will be sharing the details in the chat. So kindly have a look at your chat section. There's a lot that is going on there. You're welcome to also interact with us in the Q&A section. If you have a question for our moderator or our trainer or anyone in the humanitarian global organization, we have big staff that is part of this webinar, and we'll be able to address your questions. As I mentioned, we also have a chat section, and we ask you to engage in the chat section as well. So I will hand over to Marlene, who is our professional, who is our trainer in monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, and she'll be able to take us through this session. So Marlene, over to you.
Hello, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. So my name is Marlene Karera Kinywa. I am a meal expert. I actually practice both humanitarian and development work. So I also am a seasoned consultant when it comes to both monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, as well as program management, program implementation, and program planning. So today I will be the one taking you through this session, and I hope that it is going to be a very informative one. So one of the reasons why we want to discuss theory of change is that most people have an idea of what theory of change is, but most of them do not practically know how to use them, especially when it comes to both program management and monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. So before I even proceed into discussing the theory of change and why it is important, we will first start by saying that the theory of change is an example of a logic model. And the first question is, what is a logic model? And there are a number of logic models that are used in the different for the different purposes when it comes to meal. And just to highlight is that a logic model is a systematic, visual or even pictorial way to present a summarized understanding of the ultimate purpose of either a program, a project, a campaign, an intervention, depending on how you run your programs and how it will be achieved. So you find that the theory of change is an example of a logic model, but it's also not the only logic model. And we use logic models to give us an idea of how our project is supposed to operate. We also use logic models to show us some of the major pathways of change that we are supposed to use to get to our goal, to use to get to achieving our strategic objectives, depending on the resources that we have available, depending on the change that we envision, as well as the long-term achievement of whatever goal we have in mind. And in most cases, our logic models identify exactly what is needed, how that should be done, what are some of the activities that should be put in place, what are some of the assumptions that we have that might hold true, that might not hold true, that we intend to, that we hope are going to favor our project or our program or our intervention or our campaign. Because I believe most of you who work in the humanitarian field work with different kinds of interventions. Some of you might be having short-term interventions. Some of you might be having long-term projects. Some of you might be having campaigns that are based to influence policies as well. So when it comes to logic models will help you plan for this. They will help you look at other aspects of programming that you might not have in mind just while discussing the idea without having to put them down. So visualizing them allows you to see the bigger picture. It allows you to see how the project can be done, how the goals can be achieved, how some of the things that are supposed to be incorporated have not yet been incorporated, and how you can do that as time goes by. So speaking of logic models, the four main logic models are the theory of change, the result framework that specifically focuses on the results, that is both the short-term, mid-term, and long-term results, which are the outputs, the outcomes, and the impacts at the end of the project. And then we have the logical framework. The logical framework, also referred to as the log frame, and I believe most of you have heard the word log frame, is the tool that now envisions exactly how the goal will be achieved by achieving all the components below it. So, and that usually focuses on the goal and the outputs, the outcomes, and the main activities that will be conducted. And then now it brings the assumptions into perspective on how they're supposed to favor the project or how they're supposed to come out as risk and how we can mitigate those risks and use those assumptions and risks to create your risk matrix so that you can be able to monitor changes within the program over time by seeing what are some of the things that favor you within your environment, what are some of the things that do not favor your project, and how you can correct those and how you can embed other components that might favor your projects. So something else is that all these logic models are related to the theory of change. The result framework, you develop it from the theory of change. The logical framework is also developed from the theory of change. And the M&D framework is developed from the theory of change and the logical framework by highlighting some of the most key components that require to either be monitored or evaluated over time. So there is a relationship between logic models. And as I said, the theory of change is the most important tool because it visualizes the whole project. It allows you to identify the major pathways of change. So it also allows you to look at some of the assumptions and contribution from both project and non-project entities, which might include even conducting a SWOT analysis and even an environmental analysis of some of the things that might favor and or not favor your project, so that you can be able to see if you have enough resources to mitigate some of the risks, and if you can use some of the assumptions to your favor to help you attain your goals dependent on the project or the intervention or the program that you're running within the different settings that you operate in. So the theory of change clearly outlines the perceived long-term changes by looking at all components that should be factored in to a project. That includes the inputs that you're supposed to put in. Is it resources? Do you need a human resource? Do you need machines? Do you need computers? Do you need staff? Do you need vehicles? So it allows you to outline all those components and see what is needed, where it's needed, so that it can even aid when it comes to the budgeting of the program, to incorporate some of the most important components that you may need for you to be able to attain success when it comes to achieving your goal. So it also outlines the major pathways of change and preconditions, and as well preconditions of change. This is because it allows you to look at the current situation on the ground right now, and also look at what you envision. And then you're able to determine between the current condition and the perceived condition, what needs to be done so that we can be able to attain the change that we want to see. So, and that includes issues related to the environmental context that you can control, and the ones that you can't control that are needed for that change to occur. For example, things like attitudes, you might need to influence them in favor of your project. So those are also some of the things and assumptions that you put at the development of the theory of change level. Speaking about other logic models, is that the result framework always pulls from the theory of change by mapping out a hierarchy of objectives from different projects or program levels, and it organizes them into a series of if-then relationships. And when we talk about if-then relationships, we talk about if condition A is achieved, then we can be able to achieve result B. And how is this done? This is done by, for example, for example, like right now, I am conducting this training so that you can have an idea of how the theory of change operates and how it is important, or how it influences program management as well as meal. So when it comes to me training, I expect that by the end of the training, all the participants are going to have an idea of how important the theory of change is when it comes to program management, as well as monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. So if I am able to train, then there is a probability that my result B is going to be that you as participants are going to understand exactly how important the theory of change is when it comes to program management, as well as monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. And we are going to look, towards the end, we are going to look at how the theory of change influences some of the most important components when it comes to both M&D and program management. So another thing is the logical framework. And the logical framework, as I said earlier, it builds on the objective statement from the results framework and creates a high-level monitoring pathway, including indicators and means of verification. So when we look at the logical framework, we combine some of the information that we are able to develop at the theory of change level, bring them down to the result framework level, and see how we can include the specific ways of monitoring it, which are the indicators. So what is going to help us determine if we are bringing about change? That will require us to develop indicators. And indicators development is a process which is dependent on the understanding of the change you want to see after the implementation of the project, so that you can be able to determine what is going to show you that you have been able to attain your change, what is able to show you that you have also been able to meet your goals as you had planned, as well as what is going to help you verify if that change really occurred, or if that change is a direct component or a direct result of your program or project or intervention activities. So last but not least is the M&D framework, which summarizes contents from all the logic models that we've mentioned, starting from the theory of change, going to the result framework and the logical framework. So This allows you to put them in one table that will be able to allow you and your team give each other responsibilities, as well as plan in terms of time, when and how things should be monitored or evaluated over time. So it also includes how that information will be collected, who will be responsible for that information, and where will that information be reported. So that not only improves the monitoring, evaluation, and program management processes, but it also allows you to be accountable, to plan accordingly, and even budget as well as prioritize learning. So speaking of logic models, because I mentioned logic models, and the theory of change is one of the main and most important logic models, answers these main 4 questions. This does not mean that these are all the questions that logic models answer, but they answer what are the expected changes. So depending on the condition now and the condition that you intend to see in the future, what are the expected changes? And then how will these changes take place? So this is dependent on the availability of resources, the planned activities, and also contribution of both the programming team or the project team, the beneficiaries, and all other stakeholders. So, and that is why we create the M&D framework, so that it can allow you to include the responsibilities of all stakeholders when it comes to monitoring and evaluating of your project, as well as planning when it comes to program management component. Another thing is, how will those changes be measured? That's why we talked about the indicators and the means of verification that happen to be a very important component when it comes to both monitoring of the project as well as management of the project components. Another thing will be, how do we track progress in change? So how often will we be looking at the indicators, and where will this information be reported? So how often will we be sitting down and looking if there are any lessons, things to adjust, or even some of the factors that need to be considered moving forward? So that is what logic models answer. So speaking about program management and monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, some of the key aspects that are supposed to come out very clearly is the fact that monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning are a very integral component of program management. It's actually a component that was literally removed from the program management aspect to be able to focus on the performance of the project by looking at the key components of indicators, means of verification, data collection, data analysis, data representation, and other components of research. So it was just put aside so that people who are managing programs can be able to focus on aspects of implementation, while those who are managing monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning can be able to focus on the most important aspects of if the programs are meeting the goals, or if the project or interventions are meeting their goals, and how that information can be used to improve the processes of implementation, as well as report and even allow organizations, especially those that are focused on fundraising, to have information that they can use in their favor to show that there is progress going on or there is change, and they can be able to use them as evidence for activities that bring about change. So to discuss the elephant on the room, which is theory of change. Theory of change is a comprehensive and in most cases a visual description of how and why a desired change is expected to occur. So you find that you have to look at different components, and I will say that the main components you look at when developing a theory of change is the current situation that you found on the ground, the expected, the desired change or the desired output that you expect at the end of the implementation process. And then you look at all the components that come in between the current situation and the perceived change. So you end up looking at other components like what inputs should be are required, do we require resources? What kind of resources do we require? Are these funds? Are these human resource? Can we use the people that we have on the ground? Do we have volunteers? You also look at what are the favorable conditions at the field level. How supportive are the stakeholders? How supportive are the beneficiaries? What needs to be done? How can we help improve the situation of the beneficiaries, include them into the program? So while you're looking at the theory of change or developing at the theory of change, and in most cases, I say that it is best done as a part of participatory meal, where all stakeholders have an equal share of contributing so that you can be able to look at all factors, including things like cultural beliefs and other norms that might be of importance when it comes to developing the theory of change in a way that is going to be functional. Because you find that sometimes when we create projects for communities, we tend to have some of our components collide with theirs because they have a different way of living, they have different beliefs, which should all be included when it comes to programming. And that's why I usually insist on participatory meal. So some of the changes that are explained in the theory of change include two forms of changes. And that is why I'm saying it is the most important tool, because it does not only look at the factors that that are a direct responsibility of the project or organization team, but it also looks at all others that are not a direct responsibility of the project activities. So the two forms of changes that are explained in the theory of change are the changes that will be the direct responsibility of project activities, and the changes that are not the direct responsibility of project activities. So when we talk about changes that are not the direct responsibility of project activities, these are other factors that might be favored by things like the cultural norms, maybe our people's beliefs, our people's way of doing things, where you come into the community and empower them to take on some of the most important aspects of the project. Some things like changing of attitudes are not a direct responsibility of the project team, but there are certain components that you can do to influence change of attitudes and behaviors. When it comes to things that are direct responsibility of the project activities, those are the ones that, for example, you are conducting a project in WASH, and one of your responsibilities is conducting a hand washing campaign so that you can show people how to use soap. That one is a direct responsibility of the project. But whether people use the knowledge you've shared with them or the tools that you've shared with them, that is not a direct responsibility of the project team. So looking at what we have discussed and understanding of the theory of change, some of the advantages that are important when it comes to visualizing, and that's why I've said in most cases, a theory of change will either come out as a table and mostly put in Excel sheet, or as a diagram, of which you can also do both. You can create a table which is more comprehensive and use some of the most key components to develop a visual diagram that has some of the most key components. So advantages are that it always initiates discussions. As I said, when you're talking about participatory meal, it will initiate discussion and offer platforms for stakeholder engagement. At the end of the day, you ought to discuss some of the main components with stakeholders. And this is where you explore the full range of pathways, preconditions, and domains of change. Some of the things that favor your project, some of the things that are a direct result of the working environment, some of the strengths of the stakeholders as well as the organization. And we also look at some of the strengths of the beneficiaries as well, while developing a visual theory of change. And that's why I say it's supposed to be a comprehensive tool that focuses on that specific component. So another thing is that it also helps you to visualize complex information, data, and ideas in a format that can be easily understood. Because in most cases, donors and other supporters, including even some regional organization, use the visual theory of change to be able to understand exactly what project team needs so that they can be included in the budgeting as well as in fundraising to ensure that project teams have enough resources to conduct the project. It also recognizes that change can take different paths by being open to beneficiary inputs, because some of these beneficiary inputs are the ones that are going to help your project or your program be successful. So with that, we would like to hear from some of our alumni on some of the most important components on how they have been able to use the theory of change when it comes to their day-to-day work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marlene, for that presentation and that very in-depth look into theory of change. At this point, I'd like to welcome Clicksmiler. Clicksmiler, kindly share your screen, who will help us look at the influence of theory of change as a tool for program management, giving us a success story. Over to you, Clicksmiler.
All right, Diane, thanks so much. I don't know if you can get me.
Yes,
Yes,
you can.
yes,
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you, Marlene, for that a great explanation on the theory of change. My name is Clicksmiler. I'm an alumni of Humanitarian Global Institute, currently working in Cameroon like a public health specialist. I would like us just to look at this slide, the theory of change as a project management tool. And I think the successes I have had are categorized under these 5 topics. The first we see here, we have provision. And I think the theory of change helped us so much to be able to make provision structurally, systematically, and even through frameworks that we've been able to put in place, which also help us in the thinking and planning of project activities. Theory of change also detailedly help us in the identification, measuring, and tracking. Identification here could be of resources, could be of beneficiaries. Measuring is like measuring our success, our achievements, and tracking. And since project is something that has a duration, you need to track your achievement over time. You also need to track your strategies if they are bringing in change, if they're improving, if they're decreasing. So it has really helped us so much to identify, measure, and track most of our project goals and objectives, which has also impacted and designed the interventions that we have had, and we have really made maximum benefits of it, especially as far as the beneficiary needs are concerned. It has also helped us in mapping out, most especially your goals, your indicators, your stakeholders, your beneficiaries, your resources, your outputs, your inputs, and you see how each influences the other, because that is how you are going to see what you need to do urgently, how you are going to address it, who should address it, and when that should be addressed. Mapping has been very, very vital in project management, and the theory of change has really helped us so much in doing this mapping. And like Marlene said, you can use Excel or diagrams, and in most often we start with diagrams in an open discussion where people are allowed to give their contributions while somebody moderates and define each of them, and then we'll see how those relationships can be established. It has also helped us to be encouraged. I mean, you encourage project team members, and when you look at the advantages, the outputs, the time, the resources, it's also encouraging. And that is why everybody puts hands together to make sure that the project moves forward. Because with the theory of change, you can really see that we can make it, we are going forward, we have to go through this direction. This is the path we are going to use. And lastly, it has also helped us specifically in identifying gaps, the resources, or even activities that need attention. Normally in a project, things do not just move so straight, especially in humanitarian situations. We might plant we might plan for activities, and within a short run, we might have other indicators that might come to affect us. It might be war, it might be rain, it might be poor roads, it might be insecurity. And most at times, the theory of change has really helped us to be able to identify the gaps in our resources, the gaps in our activities, and it has also helped us to design attention towards these gaps. I think I would like to end here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Clicksmiler. We really appreciate that input. It was quite informative. I would like to ask Marlene to take us through the next session where we talk about influence of theory of change as a tool for MIL, and maybe you can pose this question to our participants. So over to you, Marlene.
Thank you very much, Diana. So just to briefly highlight, because I see also time is moving very fast. First of all, I would like to know if I have seen a number of questions as well as on the Q&A section. Though right now I would like to cover almost like the final component of the influence of the theory of change as a tool for MIL as well as project management. And as we have discussed earlier, we've discussed about some of the key components of the logic models as well as the theory of change. We've focused on the theory of change, and I would like us to look at how the theory of change influences most of the MIL and program management processes. So one is that it provides and organizes information showcasing the project implementation process. As I said, that we look at the current situation right now and look at the future perceived change that we intend to have or see when it comes to the target communities or the target areas, because it's not only communities and areas that we target, sometimes we even target institutions, governments to influence policies as well. So it usually provides and organizes that information in a simpler way so that you can be able to take out some of the most important components to explain how the project is supposed to operate, how it's supposed to attain its goal, and some of the things that are needed and how activities should be conducted over time to achieve the goal. So it also allows actors to prioritize learning, build on expertise and knowledge, because as I said earlier, it gives you an opportunity to know if you need to collect data, where that data will be stored, how that data will be used to inform the processes, and also how you can use that information to improve future projects for the organization, for different communities, and even for the project team as well. Another thing is that it often organizes the generation of written reports that contribute to transparency and accountability, and it allows for lessons to be shared more easily. Because we say that, as Clicksmiler mentioned, that it allows you to look at things from a different perspective, be able to look at if some of the things favor your project, and also see how you can be able to either improve the processes and sometimes even make a change here or there that might be very important when it comes to project implementation. So us using the theory of change will help us identify these assumptions, help us identify these risks that are existent in our environment, operating environment, and also identify some of the gaps that are there when it comes to resources, so that we can be able to include them when it comes to project planning and also project management to ensure that we have the right tools to meet our goals. Another thing is that it helps reveal mistakes and offers paths for learning and improvement. So it does not only offer, because it shows you the pathways of change. What are some of the things that will favor you if we conduct these activities? What are some of the things that are going to be risky when it comes to us following the path that we've listed out. Another thing is that it provides a basis for questioning and testing assumptions. As Clicksmiler said, sometimes we might find that, for example, it's an agricultural project. Weather conditions might change even the timelines. Sometimes it might be terrorism, issues of insecurity that might change exactly how you might end up implementing the project. So these are some of the components that you need to sit down and discuss as a team and see how to mitigate those risks so that to ensure that your project is running as planned. Another thing is that it provides a means for responsible actors who seek to learn from the experience and incorporate them into policy and practice. Monitoring and evaluation, especially the theory of change, will help you identify all components that you need to implement a project, which includes some of the information that might be very important when it comes to influencing policy and practice. As I said, some of the interventions, some of the projects, some of the campaigns are meant to influence policy and practice to improve certain conditions, to favor the target areas, target institution, and target beneficiaries. So it also provides a way to assess the crucial link between the implementers, the beneficiaries, and on the ground and decision makers. Because at the end of the day, it is through using these tools that we are able to showcase what we need, why we need it, and we can be able to even show the beneficiaries, this is what we expect to do, and this is what we expect from you. And it becomes easier for you to use participatory meal and even participatory implementation of the project. Another thing, it also helps to, it provides a more robust basis for raising funds and influencing policies because of identifying the major pathways of change and resources needed. It's only through creating a theory of change that you will know what you need to implement your project and how you can be able to raise funds or even mobilize resources for the purpose of implementing that project. That is by identifying the different levels and the major pathways of change so that you can be able to budget for them and fundraise for them. So with that, we have come to the Q&A segment. And for this segment, we will ask that people can feel free to raise their hands and we can be able to select you. I can see that there is a number of people who have their hands raised. So I will allow Diana to select as we hear from our participants and answer some of your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Marlene. While we select the participants to ask, I do have a specific question from one participant. So Ayun would like to know, is there a difference between logical frameworks and M&E framework? So maybe you can start by answering that while I select who to speak. Thank you.
Yes, there is a very big difference between the logical framework and the M&D framework. As I mentioned earlier, the logical framework basically includes only the assumptions, indicators, and means of verification, also the risks, because risks are a form of assumptions to begin with. That's why we mention assumption and risk in most cases together. So that does not include some of the responsibilities that are given to the stakeholders, which is included in the M&D framework. That does not include where data is reported, data that is collected on the field from certain data collection activities, that is included in the M&D framework. Also responsibility, which stakeholder is responsibility for what component and when are they supposed to be responsible for that component. Those are other components that are included only in the M&D framework that are not included in the logical framework. So the logical framework is a project management tool. Yes, it's a logic model. It's both a meal and a project management tool, but it helps the project management team to understand exactly how the activities they are doing are able to meet their goals. That's why I usually talk about achieving the results of, you will achieve the results on the upper level of the logical framework by achieving the results around it. The M&D framework is specifically for monitoring and evaluation of project components. So which includes looking at the components that are necessary for monitoring. So we look at things like the outcomes, the outputs, and the specific goal or strategic objectives. Those are what we look at, and who is responsible for ensuring that those specific components are implemented, are documented, and are monitored over time. So there is a very huge difference between the M&D framework and the logical framework.
Thank you, Marlene. And I believe by answering that, you've answered a lot of our questions, a lot of the questions that the participants had. I have been sharing a link to our community forum, Humanitarian Global Wave Community Forum, because we might not have time to answer everyone's question. We welcome you to join the forum and put in your question there, type in your question there. We will be able to answer it. And on top of either us having to answer it, you also have other participants in the same field as you who will also be able to engage you on a conversation in regards to the questions that you have. So I'd like to welcome Aisha Abdi to ask her question. Aisha, over to you. Ernest Ironsa, ask your question, please.
Thank you to allow me to ask my question. My question is, as Marlene told, she told us that theory of change is a tool for MIL. And I think this term can be a tool for planning, because when we are on the phase of planning, we must know what impact our project will achieve. Now, by curiosity, I would like that Marlene can explain the difference between impact and the theory of change. That is my question. Thank you.
Hi, Ernest. All logic models are planning tools for both program management and monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. So all logic models are planning tools for both program management and monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. When it comes to impacts are components that are achieved over time from a project activities. So those are things that are monitored by the logic models over time and reported at different components when it comes to programming and program management.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for that question. While the rest prepare for their questions, as the moderator, I would like to request us to just hang on for 10 more minutes past our closing time, because our questions are too many. We have too many curious minds with us today. So as the next person prepares to ask the question, I'd like to ask Marlene one question. This is from Konate. So Konate asks, what are some of the challenges we face when creating a theory of change? So maybe you can just highlight a few changes, a few challenges here and there, and then I'll ask the next person to unmute themselves and speak.
So one of the main challenges, and it is something that I mentioned over time, is the fact that we always have to create a theory of change as a participatory activity. When I say participatory activity, is that you first have to map out all stakeholders and see how to include them in the development of the theory of change. So when it comes to mapping out stakeholders, there is a probability that not all stakeholders might have the same intellectual ability. One, not all stakeholders might understand some of the technical components. And you find that in most cases, if a project theory of change is not developed in conjunction with other stakeholders, there is a probability that you might miss out on some of the most important components when it comes to embedding all project factors: environmental, operational factors, beneficiary factors, community factors, institutional factors, governmental factors. So you find that most of the time, the challenges involve sometimes mismatch of information. Sometimes it is lack of the right information. Sometimes it is lack of embedding some of the cultural components with the programming components. So those are some of the factors that you need to keep in mind while developing your theory of change. Otherwise, they will affect the project implementation process as a whole.
Thank you so much, Marlene. I'll ask John Bosco to ask his question. And when John Bosco is asking the question, Judith, you will follow shortly. So Judith, prepare yourself with your question. John Bosco, ask your question.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for a very elaborative and encouraging presentation on theory of change in relation to monitoring and evaluation and program management. Now, my question is, okay, how can we ensure that implementation of this beautiful theory of change that will help us to see how we have progressed, be in good collaboration with the programs and also even in financing? I'm John Bosco Castro from Malawi, and I'm working as an M&E officer for a multi-sector nutrition program. But what I have realized is no much attention in terms of financing is done to, on monitoring and evaluation. I don't know how can we, maybe learning from other quarters, how can we ensure that this section is well financed and has a robust capacity so that it really demonstrates, or it shows, it brings out the real issues in the process monitoring, and at the end, at least share the real impact of the program after implementation. Thank you. And bye, over.
So first of all, I can say that the theory of change is dependent on how you use it. And I also saw someone ask how it can be improved over time. In most cases, the theory of change is improved over time because you end up learning more about the community as you're implementing the project. So we use it as a tool to inform the processes that we are conducting at the field level, the activities, the change in the environmental conditions. Some of the things that might not have favored us in the past might start favoring us over time. So it is good to monitor those things over time so that you can be able to include them in the implementation process so that you do not miss out on any component or end up, what can I say? So that you also do not end up lacking the right resources to complete the project as well, because sometimes the theory of change is what allows you to even include some of the most important components when it comes to budgeting, because that is where you map out what needs to be done, what is needed for those activities to be done, and what resources do you need as a team to be able to achieve the goal.
Thank you so much, Marlene. I'll ask Judith to ask your question. And while Judith asks her question, I'll ask Mori Mustafa to prepare yourself with your question. In the interest of time, maybe we can move on to Mori Mustafa.
Yes, Mori Mustafa.
Thank you for this session. It's really a great session for us. So, we have learned a lot. It's just an observation from the presentation what I've learned so far from Humanitarian Global presently students. Theory of change is a concept, it's a broad concept from all the other logic models. That is why the other logic models. So I just see that theory of change, it's such an important task because it creates an avenue wherein you can monitor all your indicators, you can have all the targets with regards to that. And I was just about to answer the person that asked with regards how change also have we have the M&E plan that also supports the theory of change, which indicates the resources, which also indicates the means of verification for the fee to pay. For instance, what are you going to pay? Yes, what are the documents you need to come with at the finance office? These are the means of verification, which also connects to the theory of change. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Wari Mustafa. And yes, as you have mentioned, the theory of change is like the base tool for project planning, project management, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, because all other components most probably borrow from the theory of change to be able to develop the other logic models and to be able to advance other components of the theory of change. So thank you very much for that. And I think in the interest of time, I would like to invite Diana. We can also take some of the questions on our platforms where we can be able to answer them later in case some of your questions are not answered here. You can be able to also access them on our platforms and our M&D conversations. So on to you, Diana.
Thank you, Malin, and thank you for that interesting Q&A question. We do have so many questions. I think I'll allow one more person to ask a question because she's had her hand up for so long. So Lydia, if you're still with us, kindly ask your question before we move on to the next session.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I hope I'm audible enough. My question is, when is the right time for the right time in the project cycle where we should develop the theory of change? An example is I joined a project and I found that they were using a log frame, but it wasn't clear. So at one point, I wanted to introduce the theory of change, but the project had moved for like two years. So when I tried to introduce the theory of change, they tried to fight it, not to fight it per se, but they were not appreciating the theory of change. So at one point, I had to give up. So yeah, I just to help me, when is the right time? Should I like completely give up? Should I introduce it at this point in the middle of the project? Or it's supposed to be developed at the start of the project or during project proposal writing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia, for that question. One, a theory of change, if with the right resources, it is best developed even before the project begins. But you find that due to one reason or the other, you might find that the project is already ongoing, and some of the people who understand monitoring and evaluation or know its importance always ensure that even if the project has been running for even an year or so, it is always important to develop a theory of change so that you can be able to establish your major pathways of change and even see how to improve processes. So there is never a right time to either stop wanting to create and improve the theory of change. And it is always important that you as a practitioner, if you are at the beginning of the project implementation period, or before even the start of a project, you initiate the development of a theory of change. If you come and find that programs that you're supposed to monitor or evaluate or even manage do not have a theory of change, it is advisable that you as an M&D practitioner or as a project management practitioner develop or help the team develop the theory of change so that it can even ease the processes for you and the organization.
Thank you so much, Malin.
Hello, Marlene.
Yes, can.
Yes, this can. I will just permit, if you permit me, I think I handled a similar situation, and I would also like to share just a 1 minute of experience, what I did with that.
Yes.
Yes. What happens mostly, like you said, I had a situation of a project that started, and most of the people there were not yet into professionalism, and they did not really see the need for the theory of change, or perhaps they did it in their own way, but not using the formal way. So the project was to run for 5 years, And when I came in like a consultant, I struggled to bring in the theory of change, and I had that resistance. So what I noticed, what I did was I asked them, we are already at the 3rd year. So at this point in time, what did the project expect to do? They told me, and I started the theory of change from there. One good thing with the theory of change is that it cuts across from the beginning to the end of the project. There are different segments of the theory of change that covers each of the phases. So I just looked at what they had as planned for the 3rd year, and I brought in the theory of change to start there. If you come from the 3rd year and you want to start talking about planning, which was already done, budgeting, definitely the people will not understand you and they will want to fight you back or even resist it. So I just had to walk them from that particular point, I mean, as per their activity plan. And then from there, we moved on. And the good thing is they learned a lesson, and they really saw the need to have had that from the start. So hopefully in their next project, I think they will really need to consider it from the start. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Kan, for clarifying that. And yes, yeah, a theory of change is important throughout the whole phase of the project, including to the point where the project is going to be evaluated, because that is the only place that is going to show exactly what you are intending to achieve and how you are planning to achieve it, so that it can be evaluated over your plans. So thank you very much. And Diana, back to you.
Thank you so much, Marlene, and thank you for this very in-depth introduction into theory of change and how it's applied in different areas such as M&E and program work. Having said that, I'd like to introduce you to our upcoming course, which is the theory of change and development of stories of change. This is open to everyone who wants to attend. It will be a 5-day training from the 13th to 17th of March, and it costs $400. Although we will be offering you today discount if you join today. If you get in touch with our team today, we are able to offer you a slight discount on that. The reason behind this theory of change training is for participants to get to know the concepts of theory of change. So the 5-day training will take us through all the way from the introduction to the theory of change, to creating theory of change, to relating the theory of change to other logic models and programming aspects. And then from there, you'll be able to have a look at impact stories and stories of change, as well as impact stories in and how they're designed and how they are packaged to reflect theory of change. So I do welcome all participants to register for this training. As I mentioned, it's from the 13th to the 17th of March. That will be a 5-day training. And as you can see on the screen that I am sharing, we've shared the link with you in the chat several times, that when you come to register, when you click register here, it's a very easy process. It brings you to a page such as you can see on your screen. And you just fill in your details. You fill in your name, your email address, the country, as well as other information, and then you're able to submit, and we'll be able to take it up from there. If in case you're not able to do this right now, you can always reach out to Humanitarian Global. So at the bottom of the screen, you'll be able to see this, get in touch with us, where you fill in your first name, your last name, your email, your mobile, and the message you have for us, and then you submit, and we'll be able to get in touch with you. So like I mentioned, we welcome all of you to register for this course today. It's $400, which actually I need to correct myself that it is the $400 is already discounted for today. So $400 for the 5-day training. You're all welcome to join, and we've shared with you the link several times on the chat, and we'll be able to share with you also the details in our community forum. So I'd like to just take you through a little bit about our community forum, just to show you what we've been referring to when we say we'll be sharing all information in the community forum. So I'd like to introduce you to Discord, which is our community forum here at Humanitarian Global. And the reason for this community forum is you get to join different participants and our trainers. You get to meet our trainers such as Marlene, and you're able to discuss on thematic areas, thematic challenges such as WASH, such as disaster risk management, monitoring, evaluation, nutrition. So you're able to discuss such thematic areas, thematic topics. And the reason for us to choose Discord as our platform to hold our community forum is because it's compatible with different devices and different modes of accessing it. So by this, I mean, you can have it on your laptop, you can download Discord on your phone, you can have it on your PC, you can use even web such as Firefox or Chrome. And even it's just similar to having WhatsApp on your mobile phone. So it's not different from having WhatsApp. Now, the only difference comes in the security aspect of Discord. So if you see the screen that I'm sharing with you currently, you're able to see who's who, the people's names, and you're able to see the different chats that are ongoing. However, you're not able to see their phone numbers and you're not able to see their emails. So Discord really does protect your data privacy. It does protect your information from other users accessing it. So even us at Humanitarian Global will not be able to get your phone numbers and your emails from Discord, and other participants will also not be able to do that. So that another reason for us sharing Discord with you, or using Discord as a community forum for us here at Humanitarian Global, is because it's compatible with other applications such as YouTube. Like if you can look at the screen, you're able to see that we did have a webinar played, keeps me within Discord. Having said that, I would like to mention that we will be sharing today's webinar's presentations and today's recording on Discord. So we'll be sharing on Discord, and we welcome you to join Discord. We have shared the link with you severally. And if you have any question, you can always reach out to our team via Discord. We have also shared our contacts with you, and we will be sending more information on that via email. Having said that, I think we can come to the end of our webinar. I really do thank everyone for attending. I thank you for taking time to attend. I thank you for taking time to engage with us. And we will share the slides. We will share the recording of everything that took place in this webinar. So having said that, I do bid you farewell, and we will be in touch. I'm sure we'll communicate as we continue. So goodbye for now.
Attention humanitarian and development professionals. Are you looking to take your career to the next level? Then you've come to the right place. Humanitarian Global offers self-paced online courses designed specifically for you. With our comprehensive curriculum, you'll build your capacity in the most critical areas of humanitarian and development work. Our course offerings include monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant and young child nutrition. With Humanitarian Global, you'll have the opportunity to grow your skills and impact the lives of people in need. Visit our website to learn more about our courses and apply today.